Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Magic the Gathering. So we have a lot to talk about. We have some major results, a couple big tournaments. We also have a new Friday Night Magic promo, which you can see on the screen there. We'll talk more about that. And we'll also get some Q&A in. So first off, just a quick note talking about last week's episode where we discussed Wizards of the Coast taking away the appearance fees for the pros. If you haven't heard yet, that has been changed. They have reversed their decision to do that, at least for next season. Pros will get the same appearance fees they got this season, and they will still increase the prize money at the World Magic Cup as they promised in their announcement originally. So that's actually pretty cool. So kudos to Wizards for listening to the community, and I'm sure it's hard to go back on something that you made a big announcement on, but I think it was the right thing to do. The timing of it was just very poor, I think, in general, and the fact that people have been working towards something they felt was promised to them and just assumed that it would be the same next year as it was this year, and then that was kind of pulled out from under them at the last minute, and yeah, it didn't really come off very good. So it was a good example, though, of the community really coming together to support a very small group of people, but a group of people that I think at least a portion of the community feels is very important to the game. Not everybody watches the Pro Tour, but people can identify with a lot of the players in the Pro Tour, and folks really went to bat for them and really were vocal about their feelings and what Wizards did. So, hey, in the end, I think it's a big win, at least for now. Wizards did say that they will be working with pros to discuss the future of the plan as far as payment goes and everything like that. I have no doubt in another year or so, and we'll probably be hearing an announcement shortly before the new Pro Tour season begins. I think they're still going to work towards what they wanted to do, and I think that they will come up with a creative solution, though. I do feel like they don't want to give big appearance fees, probably for legal reasons, and because of that, I think they want to convert that to prize money. I think they just need to give the players ample warning before they do that, and secondly, I think they just need to find a way to make sure that Platinum Pros are all going to be able to get a cut of the prize money. So basically, it changes from, hey, you know what, we're giving you an appearance fee, to, hey, you know what, we're giving you prize money for making Platinum or what have you, and whether that means all Platinum Pros get to go to Worlds and the minimum payout is still like $12,000 or whatever. That's how they're probably going to resolve it. So stay tuned. I think there's more on that to come. But having said that, let's look at GP Toronto and some of the results. Now, this was a standard GP. I'll start off by saying congratulations to Robert Lombardi, who won the whole thing, defeating John Stern in the finals. And let's look at the diversity in the decks in the top 8. And what I think you're going to find here is the fact that, hey, there's still a great amount of diversity right now in standard, so that's a good thing to see. It's always interesting to see the first GP after the Pro Tour and kind of see where the metagame kind of goes. Let's look at Robert's deck first, and this was Esper Dragons. This was a deck that did see some play in the Pro Tour. Didn't see as much time on camera. I think the Pro Tour is focused a lot on some of the Golgari builds that were out there that were interesting. And we didn't see some of the other decks as much anyway. But this is actually a very, very strong deck, as you can see, running 3 Jace Prince Prodigies, 4 Dragonlord Ochitais, a couple Somagars, a couple Kalitoses are in there as well. So a lot of powerful cards, and of course, deck made it all the way to the top. Now, John Stern came in second. He was playing Green-White Tokens, which was the deck that won the Pro Tour the previous week. Not too many changes here. I think it's just almost the same deck list, give or take. Of course, this is running 4 Gideons, 4 Nisses, and you'll notice here that there was also a second Green-White Tokens that made it into the top 8 as well. There's also a Grixis control deck, and this is another deck that actually has been around. It wasn't in the spotlight quite as much last weekend, but still another very strong deck. This one running 4 copies of Goblin Dark Dwellers. And we kind of round things out here with a couple copies of White-Black Control. And this is another deck that has seen play. Again, wasn't a big deck spotlighted last weekend, but has been around now really since at least the second week of the new standard, if not the first. And there's a quick look at that deck list, and I'll have a link to all this information if you want to take a closer look at any of these decks. And we also see mono white humans. Now again, this is a deck that's been around since week 1. It was the second most played deck in the Pro Tour, and here it is. It's still good, making the top 8. Did very well, obviously. And this is just a very aggressive beatdown deck. A lot of 1-drops in this deck. The last deck that I thought was actually kind of interesting was this Naya Tokens deck, which really is more like a Super Friends sort of feel to it, but another really powerful deck that's using Gideon, Nissa, Chandras, and just doing a lot of crazy things. One of the things you'll see a lot of these decks have in common is the removal. Declaration in Stone has been a huge card. Jermoka's Command continues to be a huge card. These types of cards are really shaping the format. So that's Standard. What's been going on in Modern? Let's look at Star City Games Modern Open in Milwaukee. And first off, congratulations to Joseph Presnell, who won with Avacyn Company. Now, notice Avacyn Company got 3 of them in the top 8. It seems to be the big deck right now in the meta, more and more so. So let's take a quick look at that deck. But first, just to round things out, we got a green-red Tron, we got Burn, we got Infect, Death Shadow Aggro made it, Jund rounded out the top 8. So quickly, we're just going to look at a couple of these decks. We'll look at the Avacyn Company deck. Basically, this is the new Birthing Pod deck, and it's doing very well in this current meta, as you can see from this top 8. Just wanted to glance in at the green-red Tron deck as well. This was piloted by Joe Lessett, and again, not too different from what you've been seeing, but at least recently now we have Worldbreaker, which has become a new addition to this, along with Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. When I say new, not super new, but at least within the last few months. Still running 4 Karn Liberateds, a couple Ugins. Other than that, the deck isn't too different, but it's very interesting to see how this deck has evolved as well. So those are the results for this week. We'll continue to keep an eye on the Standard and Modern metagames as more tournaments roll out, and hopefully keep you connected. Also, much like the Standard, if you want more information, check out the description below. I'll leave a link to the results of this tournament as well. All right, next let's talk about Friday Night Magic and the July promo card. So what you see on your screen here is the art for the new promo card, and it is Spatial Contortion. So a couple things I'll say I like about this. I actually like this card quite a bit. I think it's a great card, so it's a great choice for a Friday Night Magic promo. And I do like the fact that it's a colorless card, so you kind of get that full art sort of feel through the translucent text box there. I don't know, the art I'm not super crazy about. It does feel like some of the Zendikar art, which felt a little computer generated to me. So I don't know, I'm not super excited about it. I think the actual piece of art is interesting with what's going on in it, but I kind of prefer the Innistrad art style. I don't know, maybe they're sort of making Innistrad a certain art style and keeping Zendikar a certain art style. Maybe they're trying to do that in different planes, which could be interesting. So yeah, so there it is. I think this is a great choice for a card for July. And so finally, we're going to wrap things up with some Q&A. So our first question comes from Brian Clem, who asks, what are a few of your favorite cards in Shadows over Innistrad? So there's a number of them that I really like for a lot of different reasons. I'll try to go through them pretty quick here. First, we have Archangel Avacyn. Now, this is probably a lot of people's favorite card because it's very powerful. For me, there's a few things that really draw me to it. I like the fact that it's kind of like Sarah Angel, but just even more powerful and legendary. I think that's really cool. But really, the hit for me is just the style points for the story and the lore behind it. I just love the fact that she starts out as kind of the guardian angel and can flip into this really aggressive, vengeful angel. I think that's awesome. So I just love what they did with this card and this character. Declaration Stone, we talked about it a few minutes ago. I love like premium white removal. Like I always love cards like Swords to Plowshare, Path to Exile. Now this isn't an instant and it costs 2 and not 1, but much like those other cards, it's huge in white decks. It really helps you control the game, helps you remove creatures, and much like those cards that I mentioned, it also kind of gives your opponent a little bit of an advantage. In this case, allowing them to get potentially some clue tokens. So much like Path or Swords, you really have to kind of think about how and when you use it, but for the most part, you're still going to be coming out on top. It's just so powerful. Reaper of Flight Moonsilver. Now, this one I really like because it reminds me so much of a card I used to play a lot, and that was Fallen Angel, which was originally printed in Legends, and it was a 2 black, 3 colorless, 3/3 angel, and basically it was flying, and the ability that's on there for Delirium was just on there. So playing this in Limited has been a lot of fun. And don't underestimate the power of this card, especially later in the game when life levels get low. Your opponent kind of has to chump block this, or else it's always presenting lethal in certain situations. So I've played with this, done very well with it in Limited, and it just brings back a lot of memories. Epiphany of the Drownyard. I really like this card a lot. Again, I played it in Limited. I haven't really played it in Constructed or anything yet. I feel like it's Constructed viable, perhaps in the right deck, but it just feels so good to draw cards. Even when you're getting the lesser quote-unquote pile of cards, it's still a lot of cards you're drawing off this thing. You're going to get something that's going to be useful to you at some point, right? So I just really like this, and I just like the flavor and everything behind it too. Macabre Waltz, this has been phenomenal in Limited, especially in a world with Madness and Delirium. You can play this card and just trade creatures all day long and just get them back for only 2 mana and hopefully get some advantage too off the discard. This thing can be incredible. I don't mind running 2, even 3 of these if I get them in my sealed pool or in my draft. I love this card, and if hopefully not too distant future, I will be able to post my Magic Online pre-release sealed deck tournament I was in, and I got to play with 2 of these in my deck. They were amazing. Sinister Concoction. This is good in Limited. I've actually had a lot of success with it in Limited, but why it's on here more so is just the flavor. I just love the fact that it's kind of the witch's brew. You have to throw in one of everything to destroy the creature. I think it's just really cool. Triskaidekaphobia. I've never played with it. I've gotten it a couple times in my pool, but never had the guts to do it. I've seen people play with it. I've seen them lose to their own Triskaidekaphobia. I've seen them win games off of it. It's just a fun card. I think it'd be really fun in multiplayer games. So I would like to try it at some point, but the reason it's on here is just because it's just really fun and different and creative and unique, and I also love the art as well. Lightning Axe. The reason I chose this one was I love when they reprint a card and I think completely different about it the second time around just because of the other cards around it. So this was originally printed in Time Spiral, and at the time it was good removal, but sometimes I didn't even make my cut because there was just other things I could use for removal. And you'd look at this card and you're like, oh, 5 damage is good, but it can only go to a creature, and I have to pay basically 6 mana or I have to discard a card. That's a pretty big drawback. But now when you play it in Shadows, you're like, yeah, this is like an auto include because I can help get Delirium, I have other Red Madness cards, and I'm going to get value off this thing, and you just want to play it. So I think this is a great example of a card that's very different the second time around. Traverse the Ulvenwald. I just like the power level here. I think this is a very powerful card. I think as time goes on, it's going to find a home in Modern, maybe even Legacy, and it's already seeing play, obviously, in Standard, and I got to play a little bit in Limited, where obviously it's not going to be quite as strong in, say, Sealed or something like that, but still very good. Finally, last one I picked was the Gitrog monster, because really, how could I not? I mean, look at the art, just look at all the abilities. This card is awesome, and it's just fun and amazing. And maybe it'll never be in a top tier Standard deck, but it's awesome, and it's a fantastic commander card. It's just great in multiplayer games. It's just great in cubes. And again, just look at the art. I don't know what else to say about it. All right, our next question comes from Baxter Stein, who asks, how do you think WotC can revive blue control in Modern? I really like that question because I love blue and blue-white control decks. Those were the decks probably I played more than anything back in the old days when it was a lot more viable, obviously, in those days. So a couple things. Now, the quick, obvious answer is, well, print better blue cards in Standard that will convert over to Modern. However, I don't know, WotC doesn't seem to want to push blue that much, at least recently. So I have no doubt at some point we'll get some better blue cards, but at least for the time being, they're kind of being very careful with blue. They gave away a lot of blue's powerful abilities to other colors. Red's picked up some of its like control magic type abilities and stuff like that. Even card draw, which is still mostly blue, has kind of been spread out a little bit. So I don't know. It's I don't think you're going to see new stuff, but I do think that there's a lot of stuff that's on the ban list that if it became unbanned would probably get a blue control deck at least more viable. Unbanning Ancestral Vision was a great first step. There's a few other cards on there I think they could think about. A couple cards that are on there, Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise. These two scare me a little bit. I don't know if they want to ban these. Definitely not both of them. Maybe Treasure Cruise. I don't know. Dig Through Time is very strong. But what I'm thinking more along the lines of are cards like Preordain and Ponder. I do think they could unban these and give blue a push without necessarily breaking the format or anything like that. I mean, these are fantastic cards. They allow the control decks to be able to get a little more card selection, kind of stack things a little more in their favor, and that's really what they need to go from good to great. I think cards like Sleight of Hand and stuff are okay, but they're just not as good as these two cards. The other thing, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this one, but what about Jace the Mind Sculptor? And on one hand, yeah, Jace I know is very, very powerful. You definitely don't want to break the format and unban something that's too powerful. But I don't know, is Jace as powerful as it used to be? And the reason I say that is, first off, there's a lot more ways to deal with Planeswalkers than there used to be. There's a lot of cards that are destroy target creature or Planeswalker. We didn't used to have that, obviously, when Jace was originally printed and when Modern even started out. And secondly, Modern's also become such a quick format. Now granted, control decks could slow the game down a little bit, but Modern can sometimes be over turn 4, turn 5, turn 6. Do you even really have time to get a lot of value out of Jace if the games are that fast? So I don't know. Is Jace really that great to the point where it needs to be banned anymore? I think it's still very, very powerful, but I don't know. You know, I haven't tested with it, so it's just kind of me spitballing. So I don't know if anyone has thoughts. Definitely let me know in the comments below. But I do think it's an interesting conversation, if nothing else. But even regardless, even without Jace, I think if you had Ancestral Vision and then Ponder and Preordain, I think you'd be at least on the right track at that point. And last question for the day is from Cave Trolling, who asks, I don't think an aggressive reprinting policy would hurt Wizards much. Could you comment on the problem and various solutions? And actually, this is a really well-timed question, and I talked about this a little bit a few months back in an episode of This Week in Magic the Gathering where we talked about the reserve list. But the reason this is very topical now is not only that Eternal Masters is coming as well as Conspiracy 2, but also Mark Rosewater recently addressed this on his Tumblr blog. And basically, I'll loosely quote, he kind of said that when they reprinted Thoughtseize in Theros that he felt that was a mistake because it was too powerful for the standard format. And he went on to say basically that it's easy for someone to make a video or write an article saying Wizards should do X, Y, or Z to print more copies of cards to get them in players' hands, but there's hundreds of things that they have to think about that the general public is not aware of. And that was kind of his response to it. And I think I mostly agree with that. I think there's two things going on there. Again, from my experience in the past working for large corporations, I will tell you, yes, there are probably hundreds of things that we as the general public are not aware of. There's also a lot of marketing information that we're not aware of out there, that they have specific data and numbers that just isn't something we're privy to. So when they make decisions based on those numbers, sometimes it seems weird and strange to us, but they're working off of more information than we have. Now, for example, you probably don't want to print Liliana of the Val in the next standard release, right? Because that would warp the standard format and would be bad. The positive side, of course, more copies of Liliana for modern players, but any standard players might not be real happy with the format, or you don't want to ban it either, because then I open a pack and I get this card that I can't even play in standard. A lot of people wouldn't be happy with that. Another solution some people suggest is, what about dual decks? What if you put Liliana the Veil versus Jace Vern's Prodigy dual deck out? It solves a lot of problems. It gets a standard card that people really need to get their hands on out there. It gets a modern card that people really need to get their hands on out there. You can print a ton of them. They have new art, so people will still be attracted to the old one, so when it collapse the economy of those two cards necessarily. And yeah, that's one option, but then you have to think, Well, look how people treated full art lands in fat packs of Battle for Zendikar, right? If you were to go ahead and print a product like that, which is really designed for new players to get their hands on these pre-constructed decks to really have a product that's entry-level Magic, you print this, and where's it going to end up? Collectors are going to start buying them. People are going to just go out there and try to get their hands on as many as they can, try to flip them, resell them, at least for a period of time. These new players aren't going to be able to find this product which is designed for them, and then they could potentially lose new players engaging into the game. So a lot of times it just seems like an easy answer, but the more you think about it, it has repercussions that aren't favorable, and I think that's what Mark Rosewater was trying to say in his response. Now, having said that, on the flip side of the coin, sometimes, again, working for a big corporation, things will happen and you'll kind of make a rule or a guideline, and then many, many years will pass, and that rule and guideline just kind of sits there and people just don't question it anymore. They just say, hey, this one time 10, 15, 20 years ago, we did this and it didn't go well. So we're never going to do that again. And if anyone suggests it, they're crazy. And sometimes it's dangerous thinking too, because times change, the landscape changes. For example, a quick top of my head example, Chronicles in 4th edition were printed back in 1995. There was a lot of backlash from collectors because they reprinted a lot of cards that were worth money and it crashed the market. Now, because of that, they ended up creating the reserve list, and I think they are very careful about overprinting products like Modern Masters or Eternal Masters or what have you. They print them because they are trying to do something to help get cards in players' hands. But again, there's that stopgap that they're scared to go too far with the numbers and with the printing of these products. The landscape is very different in 2016 than it was in 1995. And I think that, yes, there may be some people that are really coveting their older cards and don't want reprints to crash the market. I mean, that's bad for the game. You don't want reprints to crash the market because you don't want secondary sellers to lose their businesses. Then you have less players playing Friday Night Magic or places to play Friday Night Magic. You have less players that have a place to buy Magic. That's not good, but at the same time, I think there's a happy medium there. And I think we found that if you were to reprint a card, people are still gravitated to the older version of the card, at least certain players, that are going to help it maintain a lot of its value anyway, but the newer version of the card is still getting out there for players to play. So something like that I think is viable, and I think Wizards needs to tweak their formula a little bit. They don't need to print Eternal Masters, for example, like water, but I don't think they need to keep it as limited as they're keeping it either. I think there's a happy in-between that they can find there that they haven't quite found yet. So, I don't know. Those are just my thoughts, and let me know in the comments below what you think about all this. I know this is always a very, very hot topic. It comes up all the time, quite a bit, in all different ways. But, I think Wizards is trying. I do think sometimes they are scared to take a risk that they probably should take, and they probably need to take a little more of a leap sometimes when it comes to some of these products. But at the same time, I think we, as a consumer base too, have to understand that they're working with some information that we don't have, and it's not as simple as maybe it seems or seems like it should be, and we do have to kind of respect that too, I think. So it's a great question. I'm glad that he brought it up, especially at this time. So that was the last question of the day. If you have any questions for a future Q&A, definitely leave them in the comments below, and we will get to them in a future episode. Until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.
Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality videos for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a good day.